The story opens with a narrative explaining a kind of bars known as drop bars. Despite being ordinary bars, drop bars are places where mobsters constantly launder their dirty money safely. In these places, money constantly flows in and out and is transferred by couriers to its final destination. Bar owners never know when their bar will become a drop bar for security reasons. In one of these bars, we meet the main character, a bartender named Bob Sajanowski. He is a quiet man with a dark past and a latent capacity for violence behind his gentle demeanor. The bar is run by his cousin named Marv, while it is actually owned by the Chechen mafia. We also learn that Bob is an obedient Catholic and a frequent churchgoer. One night, on his way home, he hears a dog yelping in a neighbor's garbage can. Opening the bin, he finds the poor, badly injured pit bull puppy left for dead. The owner of the house, Nadia, appears, wanting to know who is snooping around her house. Bob explains the situation to her and urges her to help the poor puppy. They then take the puppy home to dress his wounds. The puppy has some knots and bruises, implying that it has been beaten badly. But fortunately, the wounds are not too deep. During the conversation, Bob notices some bruises on Nadia's neck. It also turns out that Nadia is a waitress in a restaurant, but she also worked for a while at an animal shelter. Eventually, Bob manages to convince Nadia to keep the dog until he takes it back in 2 days. At the bar nearby, two brothers talk nervously. They plan to rob cousin Marv's bar. The older one is more confident, thinking they have to do it to show their superior how good they are at running a risky business like this. Back at the bar, we see the store under siege by masked robbers just before closing. The robbers point a gun at them, ordering Marv to fill the bag with all the money. During the robbery, Bob finds the watch of one of the robbers broken. After the robbery, they find bartender Randy, beaten to death in the backyard. Later, a detective named Torres shows up to investigate. He knows Bob because they have both attended the same church for years but have never spoken. During the investigation, Bob does not have much to say, as the robbers were covered from head to toe. But he reveals to the detective that one of them was wearing a broken watch that was stopped at 6:15. It is also revealed that the money stolen was about $5,000. Marv becomes enraged when he discovers that Bob revealed the broken watch during the investigation. He thinks the Chechens will be angry. Bob shows up at a certain time and takes the puppy back. He also asks Nadia to accompany him to a pet store to buy some supplies, since he has never had a dog before. Bob gets the idea to name the puppy Rocco, but he is more interested in Mike. One morning, while the cousins are shoveling snow in the backyard, they receive a visit from Chavka, the Chechen mob boss who owns the bar. Chavka reveals that he has taken one of the men behind the robbery hostage. Chavka asks Marv and Bob if they know this man, but they both deny it. He also wonders why the police were aware of the broken watch, and Bob apologizes desperately. Chavka threateningly tells Marv to take the money back, before speeding off. Marv feels threatened because if he already knew how to get the money back, it would imply that he had something to do with the robbery. One morning at a dog park, Bob is playing with Rocco when he is approached by Nadia, who is exercising. Nadia has missed the night shift at work and offers to take care of Rocco to earn some extra money. Bob, who is already attracted to Nadia, accepts the offer without hesitation and they exchange phone numbers. After they leave, Eric Deeds shows up and tells Bob that he has a nice dog. But Bob, who is skeptical about Eric's appearance, grabs Rocco and leaves. Across the street, a thug-looking stranger in a car asks Marv for the address of the hospital. Marv gives it to him, but there is something wrong with the guy which makes him suspicious. We go back to Bob's house, where he is talking to Rocco and apologizing to him because he cannot take him out today. There is a knock on the door and Eric shows up. Eric rudely welcomes himself inside. He asks where Bob has put his puppy, which leaves Bob puzzled. He claims that the dog is his, but Bob refuses. Eric says that if the dog is Bob's, by law it must have a security chip number and a license. Eric then shows Bob the serial number of his security chip, suggesting that he is the owner. Bob asks him what he wants, but Eric subtly threatens him, telling him it's sunny but you never know what it will be like. Then he takes Bob's umbrella and leaves. Bob and Nadia's relationship improves thanks to Rocco. Back at the bar, Marv shares with Bob his concern about the strange address boy, thinking his life is in danger. Marv still cannot forget losing his bar to Chavka Umarov after 10 long years, or, as he claims, 8.5 years. Bob is shocked to find something bizarre in a garbage bag. A severed hand along with money covered in blood. He has sent back the stolen money along with one of the robbers' broken watches and the severed hand. They are puzzled as to who took the money and why. Bob brings the severed hand into the bar and begins to skillfully wrap it, while Marv wonders how skillful he is, as if he has done this 1,000 times. He puts the severed hand in a duffel bag and heads outside. Once Bob leaves, Marv bursts into tears and starts taking the blood out of the money and handing it over to the Chechens. Meanwhile, while playing with Rocco, Bob also throws the arm wrapped in the bag into the river. Some time later, the Chechens show up at the bar to take back the stolen money. Chavka also informs them that his bar will be the drop-off point for Super Bowl night. Bob goes directly to Nadia, asking her how she knows Eric. The question startles Nadia, who storms off, leaving Bob bewildered. Back to Marv, he finds Fitz asking to get into the car. But Fitz is frightened because he lost his brother just like that. He gets into the car and they drive off. Marv offers him the Super Bowl night robbery, when there will be a huge amount of money at the bar, but Fitz refuses his offer and just wants to stay alive. The trunk opens again, and Marv tells the guy to get out and close it suddenly. When Fitz nervously does so, Marv runs him over several times and kills him instantly. Then he drives off, changes cars, and drives away. In the next scene, Bob and Nadia meet and Nadia regrets her previous behavior. She tells Bob about how she and Eric used to date. Eric was sweet at first, but soon realized how horrible he was, and they broke up. Nadia also warns Bob that it was Deeds who killed Richie Whalen, which Bob already knew. Later, Marv meets Deeds in a diner and tells him that Bob is afraid of him. Eric explains that he wants to get more respect from Bob, and that if he doesn't get it, there will be a real problem. But Marv calms him down, telling him that he has a solution where everyone can win, when, in fact, his plan is to replace Eric with Fitz to help him with the Super Bowl robbery and distract Eric enough to make Bob give up the fight. Detective Torres meets with his colleague from earlier. He is provided with Eric's psychological file and something in the file catches his attention. Back home, Bob calls Rocco, but there is no answer. He finds Rocco safe and sound in his crate, as well as his umbrella, implying that Eric has been there. He goes to Eric, asking him to step aside, and tells him that he will not take Rocco back. In response, Eric asks Bob to give him $10,000 to let him keep Rocco, but the latter refuses because the sum is unaffordable. Marv informs Bob that he will not be at the bar for the Super Bowl. Bob is skeptical. He is doing something crazy that they will not be able to put right this time. Marv yells at him because he is obsessed with his glory days, when he was respected until he lost the bar to Chavka. Back at the bar, Bob hides $10,000 in the basement, along with Rocco and a gun. On the other hand, Eric breaks into Nadia's house, intimidating her to accompany him to Marv's bar. Despite his initial refusal, Nadia decides not to mess with the two and accepts them. Much to Bob's disappointment, they show up at the bar together that evening, while Nadia is embarrassed. Marv calls Eric only to find that he is already at the bar because of the commotion. Marv covers the trunk with plastic and drives to the bar. He parks 2 blocks away to keep an eye on how their plan is going. Throughout the night, various groups of mobsters drop off money. Eventually, the bar empties except for Eric and Nadia. Eric shows Nadia his gun before going out for a smoke. Nadia sobs and warns Bob that Deeds intends to shoot him. When Eric returns, Bob offers him money for the dog. Deeds asks how much Nadia is worth to him and states that he would rather have the money in the safe. Bob refuses and begins to tell him about Richie Whalen, whom he claimed to have killed. He reveals that Marv had a terrible gambling problem while working as a moneylender. Richie was one of many people who owed him money. However, Richie won a large sum of money at the casino and paid Marv back. But it was not enough to cover Marv's debt. So Bob tracked him down and shot him twice in the face to prevent anyone from knowing that he had paid Marv back. Bob then asks Eric that if Bob killed the guy, how can Eric go around claiming he did it himself? Bob shoots Eric twice in the face as he begins to respond. He informs Nadia that she is now safe for life and free to leave. She cannot believe that he trusts her and will not tell anyone about the murder. Terrified, she rushes out. The Chechens show up and dispose of Eric's body. Chavka, who has sympathized with Bob from the beginning, offers him to run the bar from now on and also renames the place Bob's Bar. Outside, Marv sees the suspicious man from earlier approaching his car. He knows what will happen. Marv is shot in the head within seconds. Torres shows up to investigate further while Marv is no longer alive and Eric is missing. Bob is not surprised because this is the kind of neighborhood. It also turns out that Deeds could not have killed Richie Whalen because he was in the psychiatric clinic at the time. Torres then goes up to Bob's ear and asks him in a low voice, "I bet nobody saw you coming." However, the detective is fairly certain that Bob is the one behind the murder of Richie Whalen as well as Eric Deeds, but he lacks evidence. In the final scene, Bob takes Rocco to Nadia's house. Bob then apologizes to her for the night at the bar. Bob is embarrassed by his past behavior, but tells Nadia that he was forced to kill a jerk like Eric because there will never be an end to blackmail by people like Eric. He asks her if they can go out together. Nadia is both frightened and in love with Bob. She finally agrees, saying, "Let me get my jacket."